And I'm going to hand over to Tony, who's going to give us our final demonstration, the presentation this evening, and on the Woodcut Bowlsaver. Here we go.
Now, this is a large lump of black bean. It's fresh wood and nice and wet. It's about 11 inches in diameter, and I've rounded it out roughly, and it's now going to turn it down. This whole demonstration might be a bit tedious for some people. It's got quite a lot of elements of turning a bowl in it. Perhaps you'll bear with me if I hear a lot of groans, then I'll speed it up or chop some out. But it does drag on a bit. I hope you'll bear with me. Here we go. It's mounted on a faceplate, and it's got the tail stop brought up. I'm using a nice swept back gouge to shift a lot of fresh wood quickly. I'm wearing a helmet because although it's not dusty, it's black bean is thought to be a bit irritant, so I want to avoid sucking and stuff. So just taking a push cut across the surface. You'll notice that my knuckles don't become white at any stage. I didn't bother to put my smock onto this, and it took me a long while to get rid of the shavings. Look at that lovely stuff coming off there. Does you good to waste wood at a straight like that, doesn't it?
Did you say it was wet wood, Tony?
Yes, it's perfectly wet. Not wet enough to spray me with water, but it's been stored for about a year, wrapped up in plastic bags, and it kept perfectly. Didn't go mouldy or anything.
It's nice to turn like that.
That's the way the big guys do it, you know. I start with a pull cut on the base and then turn over smoothly into a push cut. You'll notice the consummate skill with which that's done.
Is that an Ellsworth grind on that tool?
Sorry?
Is that the Ellsworth grind on that?
That's actually a Glenn Lucas tool. This is what I've got most of the specialist signature gouges, and I only use two. One is a perfectly a conventional grind, and the other is this Glenn Lucas one. And this I find the best of all. Don't get it off. I love watching Glenn Lucas's demonstrations. This is just the way it comes off.
That setup has got.
And he makes the shavings fly off the other way and go through the bin.
The setup he's got there, his new workshop's incredible.
Getting there. Just making a foot now. See the way you can turn over from a pull cut to a push cut. You get a perfectly smooth, continuous curve. Notice how the bevel is parallel with the work, but it's not actually rubbing. It's touching, but not rubbing. Didn't really need the tailstock there, but to get it out of the way now, we'll put a chucking place on mortise tenon on the bottom. We'll eventually get round to the hollowing, but we have to go through this stuff first, and I thought it's nice to show the whole thing. Mark out the diameter for the chuck. Now it's very important to get the chuck fitting really well on the base, because when we do the hollowing, it's going to put quite a strain on the mounting, and so you don't want the piece to come loose in the chuck. So make sure that you make the tenon fit the chuck when it's almost closed.
Do you use a dovetail? Always use a dovetail for this?
Yes, I'm using a dovetail. The gripper jaws need a rather bigger tenon, and there's no point in wasting wood. Using a skew chisel to clean up the dovetail.
What size dovetail jaws do you use on a ball that size?
Right, we've now turned it around and mounted it in the chuck. Going to clean up the base now.
Could the person who asked the question repeat it a bit louder, please?
Yeah, sorry for that. What size of the dovetail jaws do you use on that, Tony? Is that a 75 or 100?
No, it's a big one. This is 100.
Thanks.
Well, yes, it's 100. Yes, it's a supernova chuck. It's I find it very good for this sort of thing. Yeah. Just a pull cut across the surface to level it up. Notice the handle is nice and low to get a clean cut. Not that it matters for this, really. Well, there's a bit of the pith still there, so I'll take another cut to get rid of the pith. That'll do. Now we're going to make a chucking mortise in the centre, because we'll need to be able to remount to make the successive cuts. You'll see the points that go along. So this is meant for a chucking expansion. Taking the make a cut with a parting tool with a slight angle to get the dovetail. Move some more wood. Up the dovetail with the screw chisel.
So would that be for what size jaws would you use for the expansion, Tony?
It's the Supernova chuck again, just in expansion. So it's just about 110 millimeters, I think. Doesn't need to be very deep. Now I'm marking on the surface where I'm going to cut with the Bowlsaver. The Bowlsaver blade is 8 millimeters wide, and it's best to leave at least 20 millimeters thickness in each bowl. Certainly for the outside one needs to be 20 millimeters, and then there's a gap of 8 millimeters. You don't need to mark all these things, but it's nice to just show where we're going to cut. Right, now let me just explain. This is the Bowlsaver, the Woodcut Bowlsaver mounted here. It's mounted just with a single pillar in the tool post, and it has this horizontal platform and a handle with on this arc, and it has two blades. It has a small blade and a large blade. I think I'm going to point to that in a moment. Yes, there it is. There's two blades. Yes, a small blade and a large blade. First of all, the large blade is in the cutting position. The small blade is just out of the way. So to ensure that is exactly on the centre. Make sure the cutting point is exactly on the centre point. Yeah. We want to ensure that the correct depth is there. This can be done with perhaps I can explain better that we've got to get the depth right. Now that arc, the distance of the tip of the cutter from the center point, you can measure that and take calipers and measure just how far that's going to go towards the back of the bowl, and adjust the position of the Bowlsaver device so that it leaves the right thickness at the base. You can do this, the manufacturers provide a template, which I've lost long since, to do this, but instead I've made a little laser gadget. But better done with this simple laser device. Fits in there, place in, right. Now you can buy this for £60, or you can make it for £2, and I prefer to do the latter. So there's just a rod fitted in, a hole drilled into the centre bolt, and then this little bit of rod turned down, and a simple laser pen mounted at the end on the wood with two holes, one for the inner and one for the outer blade. Tested. So as a matter of fact, I've got it in the wrong hole. I didn't realise I've got it in the wrong hole, and I managed to wriggle the thing around to actually show on the outside. So now that's pointing on just the inner aspect of the big blade. Aim for that. And if we rotate it around, we can see where the spot of light will show where it's going to cut to, on what depth it's going to cut to. So we wriggle the whole thing around. Just tap the spring. Right. Clamp up tightly. Do that. Where did we go? except we have to bring up this. Now I might just explain. I'm a bit of a fiddle here because I hadn't got the thing in quite the best position. So excuse the fiddling. This is just an extra security amount to prevent vibrations. This gadget fits into the tailstock. So we've got to push that cone into the tailstock, jam it up tight, and then clamp up the wing nut underneath. Finally, make sure everything is tight. Okay. Everything is tight. Good.
What speed do you do it at, Tony?
Sorry?
What speed do you turn it at?
Ah, I'm not sure. You use your common sense, really. I think round about 500. Of course, it depends where you are cutting. You obviously, on the outside, you don't need it running so fast as when you're in the inners, when you're cutting the inner circles. When you're starting on the outside, you run at about 500. Then as you get towards the center, where you're cutting more across end grain, you need to increase the speed a bit. So there we go.
Tony, can I ask a question? Does the centre of rotation of the blade got to be bang on the centre of rotation of the bowl?
I can't hear.
Does the centre of rotation of the blade, does that have to be also?
No, it does. No, it doesn't. You just fiddle it around until you get the best way in which the bowl shaped that you're cutting.
And it doesn't bind then at some point.
You don't even have to make the cutter go right to the center, because when you get close to the center, the wood will snap off anyway. When you get to within about an inch of the center, the wood becomes very weak, and you can just spring the thing off, or it will just break off.
Right. Okay. And that works because you're only taking the blade just up to halfway through it.
Yes.
The blade, it wouldn't go all the way around anyway, would it? No.
That wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah.
They recommend putting your hand on the blade just to damp down any vibration, but it's not really necessary, I don't find. This works best on wet wood. On dry wood, it's much harder work. But then, of course, you're really doing this. Ideally, you'll be working on wet wood in order to make blanks that will dry out more quickly. I might say this would cut rather nicely. It didn't tend to clog up, but you can withdraw the blade from moment to moment to clear it out. Just occasionally you get a bit of shaving stick on the end of the cutter, and then you withdraw it and just blow it off and start again. The cutter is very easy to sharpen. You just give it a few strokes with the diamond card. Now we're getting close to the center. You can hear the sound is changing. Lower pitch sound. If you feel it now, you can see it's just beginning to spring a bit when you press on it. Some people wait until it's just enough and then break it off by hand. I'm pretty reckless and I just go on and cut it right all the way out. You see what a nice shape that's cut out. Retrieve the bit and show you. There it is. You can, if you want to, do a bit more hollowing at this stage to thin it out a bit more, but it's not necessary. Now we take out the large blade. The small one. Now we've turned the smaller bowl, the bit we've cut out, we turned that around and mounted it on the chuck in expansion mode. And we're now preparing a new foot on this piece.
Why don't you do the small bowl first?
Sorry?
Why don't you do the small bowl first?
Because you get into complications about not having a way of mounting them again. If you work it out, you will find. I thought that would be a very good idea, but as soon as you do it, you realise that you've cut out the inner bowl. Then you've got no way of remounting it, of remounting the other thing, because you've taken away the chucking point.
Okay, yeah, good point.
Marking this out for a smaller chuck.
Would you use a 50mm chuck for that, Tony?
Sorry?
50mm chuck for that?
Yeah, this is a 50mm, yes. I'm not bothering to get a very perfect shape for the outside of the bowl because all that will be done later, once the wood is dried. Using a spindle gouge to clean up the tenon. Now we've turned it around the other way in the chuck.
So for the 50mm jaws, you wouldn't use a dovetail, you'd just use straight-sided tenon, would you?
No, that was a dovetail again. I made the dovetail with a spindle gouge.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
Yes, there we are. And so I've just turned it around and we've again mounted up these laser guide. We set the thing to enter where the pencil line is. And we have got the laser guide to show how deep it's going to cut. Unfortunately, the camera doesn't show where the light spot is falling. And now, well, you can't see it, but I'm fitting the tailstock onto that anchoring point. Tightening everything up.
You struggling there, girl?
I'm just putting on my mask. Sounds changing, getting near the end. Just like that. So now we have 3 pieces, and the centerpiece can be hollowed. You could just mount it on that. You could just mount that on the chuck again and hollow it out in the ordinary way. And these pieces can all be set aside now to dry, and then you can mount it. You can finish off 3 bowls. So the nice thing about it is that you've not only got 3 bowls instead of 1, but you, instead of getting a lot of useless shavings, you've got much less shavings to get rid of, and nice three bowls to use. So it's altogether it's not a bad thing. Now, Woodcut make since I bought this some years ago, they've brought out a larger one which has 3 blades, which enables you to go up to a bigger size, which is pretty handy if you're a professional doing, making big bowls. I don't usually get any piece of wood that big, but if you look up, there are a number of very good YouTube videos on this, I might say. There's one by from Axminster, a very, very good one, quite recent, in which he shows both the 2-blade and the 3-blade woodcut. Glenn Lucas, who does masses of bowls for a living, he makes beautiful bowls, and he uses the one-way cutter, which is a bit different from this. The same principle, but is somewhat different. And then there's another make by Kelman, which is uses individual blades, which you have a bit more scope in varying the shape of the bowl. I might say you're not, although this appears to be cutting purely hemispherical bowls, which would be rather boring, because you're ending up with quite thick walls. You've got a fair amount of scope for reshaping the bowl in the final stages, and so it doesn't have to be end up perfectly hemispherical. Well, there it is, folks. Hope that's interesting, and welcome any questions.
I like the way you use a laser to gauge the correct depth.
Yes, as I say, originally they provided a paper template which you'd stick on a piece of plywood and cut it out as a way of acting as a gauge to set the right distance. And then recently I've seen that they've produced a commercial laser gadget, which is costs, as I say, about £60, but you can make this very easily, much more cheaply. So exactly the same idea. Yes.
I've actually got a picture of the gauge which I could show if anybody's interested.
Yes, that's very nice. You can share that.
Okay, just hang on a minute then.
Shall I unshare that?
Here we go. No, it's fine. Can anybody see that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So that just shows how the way it the gauge works. You put it on the center of the nut of the or you line it up with the center of the nut of the pivot point, and then the other end actually shows you the depth of the cutter. If you put the other end on the base of the bowl, it shows you've got a leeway there of about 20 millimeters. Okay.
Thank you.
It's very good, Tony. Thank you.
I don't see.
Yeah.
Well
Thanks
done,
very much, Tony. Very good.
Tony. Yeah. The laser thing that you set up
Very good, Tony.
was just made out of homemade. You just bought the pieces individually.
Yeah, I just bought a laser pen. You can buy these pens for about £2, and it's just a bit of wood, some holes drilled. I had to take out the centre of bolt and put it on the lathe and drill that out. Drill the centre
All right.
of that. And then a little bit of aluminium rod with the end turned down to fit into that.
Oh, that's neat.
Thanks.
Good. Any more questions for Tony?
No, that was really handy.
No, it's very good.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks very much for doing that, Tony. That was brilliant.